Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to today's listening session. First, we're going to do a couple of quick intros, and then we'll go over some of the updates from the Truth and Healing Council, some of the updates from the last listening session, and then we'll kind of get into listening. So I will introduce myself, and I'll have my office introduce ourselves, and then we'll introduce any of the council members that would like to introduce themselves. And then if anybody who is present wants to jump in and say where they're from, what they're looking and what they hope for the council, and then we can get into those updates. That would be great. So I'm Christina Snider. I'm the Governor's Tribal Advisor. I'm Mihilikana and Makamo, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Pomo in Sonoma County. And I'll turn it over to Loretta real quick.
Hi everyone, my name is Loretta Miranda. I am Chief Deputy Tribal Advisor, Special Counsel for the Tribal Advisor's Office. I'm a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians and happy to be here.
Thanks, Loretta. And just a reminder, this is being recorded, and they are being posted online and are available as well. So if any of the council members would like to introduce themselves, please jump in now. Councilmember Harper, you're muted.
Thanks. Hi, this is Joan Harper. I'm from the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria. We are comprised of Pomo and Coast Miwok people, and I'm one of the 3 representatives on the council for the northern area. Thank you.
Ayukui Naknau, Frankie Myers, Vice Chair York Tribe. Thanks for everyone for attending.
Ani Aikima Mishistu Inkatekarak Isaac. How are you? Good day. I'm Isaac Bojorquez. I'm the tribal chair for Kakuntaruk Band of Ohlone Costanoan Indians, and also am a council member, and welcome everybody here today. Thank you.
Now I did it. So thank you, council members, for joining us. And then if anybody who is joining us who's not on the council would like to introduce themselves, please feel free to. You're going to unmute your line and say hi, say why you're here. And if you've called in, it's *6 to unmute your line as well.
Good morning, Josh Saxon, Executive Director, Kaduk Tribe. Chairman Atterbury asked me to join and participate if I can. Ayuki.
Great, welcome. Would anyone else like to jump in at this time? We've got some chat, and that's a reminder too that you can engage in this listening session however you want. You can listen and kind of take in some of the updates, take in some of the comments and the feedback, and engage later in writing if you want, or you can request a consultation with our office if you prefer to speak with us directly, not in kind of a group format. You can also type into the chat anything that you'd like for us to be aware of as we move through this discussion. And you can also just unmute your line at any time. We kind of view these listening sessions as ongoing kind of office hour type listening sessions to gather feedback as needed for the council on an ongoing basis, in addition to all of the ongoing outreach and engagement from the council itself and the regular council meetings. So I'm going to go very quickly into, oh, good. So Chuck, I wasn't sure if this was official yet or not. So congratulations on the tribal advisor position over at Fish and Game, and welcome. If you wanted to say anything, you're welcome to jump in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chuck Striplen from the Mutsun people of the Monterey Bay region. For the last 5 years, I've been at the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and beginning of next month, will be starting as a tribal advisor to the California Fish and Game Commission. I'm very excited to work with tribes throughout the state on matters related to fish and wildlife, and much closer with Christina's office. So thanks.
And we are excited to have you. So very, very good appointment. We've got Molly Arthur, Brittany Jensen, and if any of you would like to introduce yourself, you can, or you can wait until we kind of get into more open discussion, whatever you are most comfortable with. Very quickly, I am going to go through, so these, as I said, these listening sessions are going to be taking place on a monthly basis in order to get more community feedback. This council is community driven, and in an effort to increase opportunities for that community input, these virtual regional listening sessions happen on a monthly basis from 1 to 2:30, and it's rotating regions by day because we know some of our council members can't do certain days and certain times, so we want to make sure that we have the opportunity for council members to drop in, engage as needed, and listen to the needs of their communities. We are rotating on a regional basis, but we are by no means defining what that means. So if you feel that you should be joining the Northern region because you live in Northern California, that's perfectly acceptable, even if you're a member of a Southern California tribe. If you are conversely living in Northern California from a Southern California tribe, you are also welcome to join the Southern California tribe, but you're also welcome to join all of them as feels right. These regional listening sessions are designed like this because we are trying to kind of future-proof this council so that when we do get into non-COVID times, that we will be able to kind of travel throughout the state and host actual listening sessions in these regions. And so we're trying to keep this format for the near term in anticipation of that. I'm going to put in the chat the link to the virtual regional listening session dates, which we have blocked out for the next year. And it also tracks with the different regions. So if you'd like to take a look, it's at this link, and participation information is the same for all of them. So you can always drop in whenever your schedule permits. So I'm going to very quickly go through our quick overview. And if folks have questions as I go, feel free to interrupt me. And Loretta, feel free to unmute and tell me I'm talking too fast if I am indeed talking too fast. So I will try to slow down so that everyone can listen and hear and can think about the charge of this council. One thing I did want to highlight before we get started is we're also in the middle of the April session of the Indigenous Permanent Forum for the UN. So if folks have time and inclination to go check that out, that is happening right now as well. And they are having some discussions and side events about mechanisms like the Truth and Healing Council. So the Truth and Healing Council was created by Executive Order N1519 and bears witness to, records, examines existing documentation of, and receives California Native American narratives regarding the historical relationship between the state of California and California Native Americans in order to clarify the historical record of such relationship in the spirit of truth and healing. The council is led and convened by the governor's tribal advisor and includes representatives from California Native American tribes and can also include relevant state and local agencies and other non-governmental stakeholders. The council is limited term and will disband upon issuance of its final report on January 1st, 2025. The council is organized under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members. There are 12 voting members, all of which must be representatives of California Native American tribes. Of those members, 3 members each are from southern, central, northern, and eastern geographical areas of the state. And for each of the areas, one of the 3 appointed voting members is from a non-federally recognized tribe. Each area also has 1 alternate voting member, and that's to establish quorum. And we have a large number of tribal leader appointments. And so we know that there's some time constraints there and want to make sure that this council can continue to do its business, even if we can't have the full complement at every meeting. The tribal advisor is charged with consulting with all of the California Native American tribes. And we're going to try to do that before January 1st, 2024 to make sure all of that information is captured before the final date of 2025. And that is to gather, record, and receive narratives regarding the historical relationship between the state of California and California Native Americans. You can request consultation on our website, or you can also email us and we can set something up. We're right now in the process of still doing web type of communications and consultations. So we encourage you, if you want to have a pre-consultation or you just want to have a check-in because you've got a lot of stuff to share, or you've got a lot of stories, or you've got a lot of experiences, or you've got a lot of elders that would like to communicate with us, we are happy to have those meetings now, with the anticipation that hopefully in the next few months we can start setting up actual in-person meetings. Those meetings too are going to be recorded, and we are also providing transcription services for in the event that there are narratives that should be captured and put in some sort of recorded in paper somewhere. And all of that information will be made available for the council to determine what to include or what to include as archives or appendices or references. Because the council is the first entity of its kind tasked with such an expansive and broad-based undertaking, it's critical that California tribal governments and the broader California Native population drive the work of the council while offering broad access and opportunities to support and amplify the work to all Californians. The council is charged with performing its work with transparency, inclusion, and respect for all experiences, viewpoints, and backgrounds, and welcomes and encourages the participation of all California Native Americans, regardless of enrollment status. The historical depredations under examination of the council are part of the collective experience of peoples of California Native descent, and their impacts are not limited to citizenship status. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation. Although the methods for public participation are not limited in general, the public may attend and observe all meetings of the council, with the exception of any closed session proceedings, submit written statements to the council, and make oral statements and testimony to the council. In March 2021, the council instituted monthly regional listening sessions, as I mentioned before, and the council adopted a charter in December of 2020. In February of 2021, the council considered bylaws, but have not yet adopted them yet, and those are available on the website in draft form. And then in February 2021, the council also created two committees, which are the Youth Council Committee and the Academic Partnerships Committee. These committees have not yet been staffed, and the council plans to create additional committees as well. And something that we'd like to hear about today too are what kind of committees would be foundational to do the work of the council. The council has discussed issue areas, scope, and the like, but would like to listen more to the community about what that looks like and what that could mean. And that will probably also track with the creation of subcommittees that go with those issue areas and scope. But also, are there other committees, like, for example, is there, an international committee that engages with some of these UN type of mechanisms? Is there, I don't know, it's open-ended, and we hope that you can tell us how to do it and recommend to the council so that we can recommend to them how to do it. So to preserve and provide public access to the primary materials for the final report and appendices, the council will live stream, record, and transcribe meetings. And it will audio record and transcribe consultations, as I mentioned earlier. All materials will be made available on my website. And then we also, as Loretta pointed out in the chat, oh, not yet, actually. We have also, at the suggestion of a previous listening session, created a WordPress for folks to follow along. And it's a very easy WordPress called CTHC updates.wordpress.com. And Loretta just put it in the chat. Thanks, Loretta. And in that WordPress, it's kind of a blog style where if you subscribe to it, you'll get all the updates, but that's also where we're posting the links to the videos, the links to notes for these meetings. The notes from last month are already up there, and we can also upload that. And Loretta also posted in the chat the overview document that I'm reading from as well, if folks want to follow along. I'm almost done. So I've just also posted the listening session notes from March, and then we're hoping to get the report for these listening sessions together before Friday for the council to take a look at as well. The council is currently meeting on a monthly basis to establish the foundation of its work, and those monthly meetings will be on the Friday right after each week of listening sessions. And what we're looking at for the structure for those is they're all 1 to 4 p.m. with 1 to 3 being the hours for doing all of the business, and hopefully having a hard cutoff at 3 for an hour of public comment as needed. It will, though, in future, convene 2-day meetings on a quarterly basis in 2022. And the first day of each meeting will be dedicated to a talking circle with community members. The second day dedicated to hearings and testimony. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, council meetings will take place virtually and live streamed until conditions allow for in-person participation. But once conditions alleviate, the council will rotate its meeting locations in the 4 geographical areas throughout the state. The next meeting, as I mentioned, is going to be held this Friday from 1 to 4, and you can find a copy of the agenda on the meetings page at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC/meetings. And you can also watch along on CalSpan, but it's a bit more difficult to do public comment there. So if you want to submit public comment, we do recommend calling in or using the Zoom. So I'm going to very quickly post the agenda. And Loretta, is there anything that I missed in my overview?
Nope, you got it covered.
Cool. So very quickly, I'm going to go over the agenda for Friday, and then we can open up to the listening part. So the agenda has now been updated to include the links for Zoom, which were not originally included. So it's up there now. And this Friday, we'll do some carryover items from the last meeting. So the council will take a look again at the draft bylaws and see if there's anything additional they want there and hopefully finalize. And then we'll take a look at the Youth Council subcommittee to staff it. That'll likely be with 2 council members. And then also may discuss a bit more about the Youth Council and the direction they want to go. So if folks on this call have ideas about the Youth Council and how it should operate, would love to hear those suggestions. And then the Academic Partnerships Subcommittee that was formed to basically liaise with academic institutions that have been reaching out to the council, seeking to partner in a number of ways, whether it's provide for a fellowship to help staff the council, whether it's using the work that they're doing in their truth and healing mechanisms to partner with the council and help provide support or provide archives or provide even have a discussion about having some archival opportunities for some of this work. That's kind of what this subcommittee is for. And so that one was formed at the last meeting, but has not been staffed. And then the third one that was not discussed at the last meeting is funding partnerships. And that's really to engage with the philanthropic community and other funding mechanisms that have been approaching the council, seeking to kind of figure out how they can be supportive. So staff has been engaging with a few potential partners. And the idea for this potential subcommittee is to really dig in there and be kind of the point person for engaging in those discussions. And then any other subcommittees that come to mind could be also discussed under this item, the item other. So if anyone has ideas about more that could be formed, that's where they would talk about them. And then one item that we're hoping to hear a bit more about today is ideas about how to staff the culturally informed wellness practitioner piece of this council. So I didn't mention it in the overview, but part of the budget for this council includes some funds to secure culturally informed wellness practitioner support with the idea that that person or that rotation or that buffet of practitioners would help support the difficult conversations that are going to happen within the context of talking circles, but also potentially within the context of day 2 of hearing style testimony. So the idea is to have someone who is on staff or not on staff, but on contract to help facilitate, help create tools, help create processes for folks to work through both the historical trauma element of this, but also the ongoing trauma that happens when you're part of a community that is almost invisible and has been decimated in this way. And then we'll go over kind of what we're doing here on the community and public engagement and input, and we'll talk about the next meeting dates and topics. So public comment will probably have a hard start at around 3 unless all those other items move quickly, and then the meeting will end at 4. So I think that is it at this point. What we'd like to hear is whatever you'd like to talk about, but also are thinking about, as I mentioned, what kind of emotional behavioral supports the community would find helpful. And we are also probably in the near term going to be contracting on 2 pieces. And one of them is a kind of research coordinator type of piece, and another is a report writer type of piece. So if folks have ideas about that or even recommendations, would be interested in hearing about that. And then if there are any, like I mentioned, foundational subcommittees that the council should consider standing up in order to do its work. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking. But if any of the council members, this is also an opportunity for all of you to get community feedback on anything you're thinking about. So if any of you have been thinking about anything and would like to put it out to this group, please feel free at this time to do so. And then again, we do have the chat. I see that there's a comment from Kathy Corey, who is participating online, but her husband is currently practicing his bass in the background. So if you'd like to give us more comments, feel free to do that in the chat. Thank you. And if folks, I know we had some initial introductions, but if folks would like to make comments or introduce themselves to this group, please feel free to go off mute and go on camera so that we can have more of an in-person type of feeling, but also no pressure if folks are uncomfortable. So I think I'll direct folks. I'll just go through some of the things folks talked about last month, but then also yesterday. Yesterday, there was some discussion about the idea of looking at sort of the foundations for disenrollment and also for non-recognition. So what was the process of cataloging, recording who was Native and who wasn't Native within the census rolls and some of the roles that are referred to in tribal organic documents. Councilmember Burris brought up that he's been thinking a lot about even the process of the Indian Reorganization Act constitutional requirements and how that kind of shifted how tribes operate to a Western more format, and that might not be reflective of Native values or pre-existing governance systems. We talked a bit about the challenge in California of how tribes were even created. I know Councilmember Harper, you mentioned that your tribe is Coast Miwok and Pomo, and I think a lot of our tribes are that, where it's, you know, probably we did have a lot of engagement between the different cultural groups, but how people ended up together is kind of a product of this genocidal history, especially with like all of the rancherias that were established basically with groups of homeless Indians who were running away from genocide. So the idea that this council could really specifically look at that as a root cause for a lot of the ongoing issues that we even see amongst each other was something that folks mentioned talking about. In the report, we have we both have links to the recordings, but then also some of the things that were discussed. So some of the comments we got, and then we also got a written comment about focusing on how to reinvigorate language and language revitalization in a way that's more targeted. Folks are talking about family homes and lands being dispossessed through the legal system. So what are the mechanisms there that allowed for that? And how does that also have a legacy today? We had ideas about commemorating the dates of unratified treaties, and then also having the regional meetings be in places that had significance based on those acts. So in Reading, they've been doing some ceremonies at the actual site of one of their unratified treaties, and that it brings presence and that historical component to the work that they're doing today, because it's a reminder of a real promise that happened in a real space that didn't happen because of awfulness. And then talked about a bit of how to support non-Native folks engaging in these conversations so that they're equipped to engage respectfully and in a way that makes sense for their role. And then talked a lot about education and curriculum changes. That was a lot of what we talked about yesterday too. Talked a lot about higher education institutions hiring California Native folks and how to support that. Looking at the intersectionality of art and restorative justice and visual representation to create more visibility of Native communities and cultures in California. Talked a bit about, talked a lot about disenrollment and non-federal recognition and identity and how that's all connected. Talked a lot about, let's see, PL 280 and some of the barriers on tribal development and sovereignty. Talked about the idea of, in addition to sort of visual representations throughout the state, having markers of places that are significant to tribal nations and tribal peoples. And then talked a bit about the 18 unratified treaties and the Indian land claims. Tribal water rights, hunting and fishing rights. So I now will stop talking because I feel like maybe some folks are ready to engage and give some feedback.
Hey, Christina, this is Isaac. So actually, just before you started to give the overview, and that's education is one that I am really interested to see where the community is looking to make those improvements upon. As we look at the atrocities that our ancestors had to endure through genocide and their resilience to be able to make it here, I really feel that in today's current education system, that true story is missing. And I think that that's a really big part of this healing process, is getting non-natives to understand what our ancestors went through, what we are still going through. I know for myself, I didn't even know I was Native until I was in the 4th grade. And that was because my own mother had that instilled from her grandfather, who had that instilled from my great-grandmother. You did not want to say that you were Native for fear of the atrocities that that would happen to you, the racism that you would endure at those times. So I really am interested, and that's why I joined today's listening session, is like you mentioned, to be able to hear from our community. I'm only one person, and I'm honored to represent as the non-federally recognized member of the region, but really want to hear from the community and how you would like us to best represent you.
Thank you, council member. And just to kind of tee off of that a bit too, and react a bit to, I think that's also a big piece of something the council could examine, is this ongoing kind of identity, how Native folks are able to even embrace that, given that it's a very recent thing that it's okay to publicly be Native. And it may still, like, it's still kind of a question mark, right? Like, I don't know, Loretta, about you, like, I grew up kind of in the same kind of boat of, you know, my mom basically being like, that's the thing that we do at home, but like, it's something that you keep to yourself and is personal, and it's all like family specific. It's all survival response. So I think even that, and the changing ways that Native people even see themselves and can portray themselves in the world, is something this council could think about. But I see that Robert is on, and I don't know if you want to be on the spot, but I think there's some good educational pieces that are responsive a bit to what the council member just mentioned. If you want.
Yeah, I'm back. I told you I'd be back. And I'm not saying anything about lawyers this time. Anyway, like I mentioned yesterday, and I'll get all my stuff through, is that AB 1551, which is emphasizing California Indian history within the framework of the California schools K through 12, is being presented in the assembly by Assemblyman James Ramos. And we're working, my wife and I'm gonna say, and I'm like you said before, Christina, I shouldn't say it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I know the American Indian Alaska Native Caucus at the California Teachers Association is endorsing his legislation, and we're trying to get the whole union to also sponsor it. So hopefully they'll look at it and they will help it get through the legislature. But anyway, so that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to include any more work on teachers. We're just trying to put inclusion of California Indian history within the state framework. So for example, when you're teaching, I'm the high school person, so when you're teaching US government in the 12th grade, you add a little bit of the Constitution with the Iroquois Confederacy and what was put in the Declaration of Independence of King George stirring us up as heathen savages to go against the colonists. And that was one of the reasons for that declaration. And then also, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the Constitution, the Commerce Clause, Congress regulates trade with Indian tribes. And the Article 2 with the president establishing treaties, and the court cases goes on and on. And you're talking about PL 280, IRA, the Dawes Act, termination in the 1950s. That's just inclusion into that. It's again, we're not trying to burden teachers with this. We're trying to just make sure the students, and we talked about this yesterday, make sure the students, both Native and non-Native, understand that we're still around. We're like bad luggage. You can't get rid of us. We're always going to be there. And again, we mentioned the suicide and dropout rates for Native American students in California. And again, with this input of California Indian history, they would be, like I said, they would become proud. Like, I guess Loretta, she grew up around Morongo and Banning. The same thing with, I grew up in Riverside, and going back to Torres Martinez and listening to my family's bird songs and having that revitalized in the 80s from my father and my uncle Alvino Siva and Sat Torres and others that would help that. Now it's just blossoming out down here in Southern California. So again, it makes the kids feel proud that they know who they are. They know a little bit of the history of the songs. And that is being presented in the schools right now. And like I mentioned before, Chumash has a curriculum embedded in the schools around where they are, and then Agua Caliente down here also does. So we're trying, like I mentioned, the healing process. We're trying to establish that healing process within the school systems, and then with the help of legislature, that's what we always want to do is keep that going. And then also the second part was ethnic studies. We're also rewriting some of the ethnic studies lessons for American Indian and California Indian history. And that's again just another avenue that we can take as educators. And I'll make my plea again, Christina. We need more California Indian teachers, but then that's another avenue that we need to look at. So I'm glad that the one of the commissioners is inquisitive about getting more California Indian history and knowing who we are to so we're not invisible any longer, that we are there, and you can have we have our fiestas and gatherings and big times. That's up in Northern California, right? Is it big times? Yeah. So get more of that out, because I find that's one of the really easiest way to introduce like Indian identity. Because again, when I was teaching high school, that was one of the highlights. Everybody who had my class was just going, "We're going to go to a powwow. We're going to go to a powwow," and that was at University of California Riverside's powwow, and that just eased them into. And then parents would go, and so they would just find this whole new. I didn't know you were still here. I didn't know it. So again, it's just we're just trying to get into that educative background within the students, and both, like I said, Indian and non-Indian. So you take it back. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you also bring up a good point about the idea of kind of regional differences that this council could potentially think about. I don't know what the word would be, but as it moves regionally, there's things that could be aligned with it, whether it's we coordinate with a local big time, or we coordinate with a local fiesta day, or we coordinate with something where there's actually an element of cultural immersion that this council could potentially partner on.
Yeah, I was looking at the minutes from the last council in Northern California, and they were talking about the California's Save the California Salmon lesson. That is a really good lesson. We've had that at one of our CTA workshops, and I think the two ladies that presented, really well done. I mean, I think we were up and screaming about endorsing them in terms of having maybe putting that into the curriculum. But again, we're just on the groundwork. And then, talking about gatherings down here in Southern California, just a shameless plug that Paula's having their gathering May 1st down on the Paula Reservation. So, if anybody's down in Temecula area and they want to go, get, revitalized, because it's been a while. Paula, I think, is having their first gathering May 1st. So just a shameless plug there. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a comment in the chat from Chuck that the youth council might be exciting, or is exciting. And an international facing committee would be great too. That one, I like this idea for this council specifically because it's so based in sort of international mechanisms, and could actually be, we could have council members going out and learning more about those mechanisms. I know Councilmember Myers, who I don't know if he's still on yet, or on still, but was talking about, he had spoken with some folks from New Zealand and some of their processes. And so I think it might be a good thing to have some folks from the council in that space. And then working groups on lands and resources, tribal citizens and state government, and then the Catholic Church focusing on lands, records, and reparations. And so the church itself is something that has been under discussion about how much it should be involved. But in looking and thinking about this thing on records and lands specifically, and obviously I'm pro reparations, but on the lands and records specifically, that's a really key piece here in the transition from Spanish and Mexican, what would even be the word? Occupation versus state occupation, and where those cracks happened in the land claims. So, and then a lot of birth records and death records are held by the church. So I think that actually having a liaison to kind of facilitate that, or a subcommittee, could be interesting. On the youth council piece, I'd be interested in hearing more about what folks think about how to do that, whether it's like a closed council or whether it's kind of open to all youth who want to be a part of it. I'm inclined to recommend the second one, just because if we want inclusion, that feels better. But if folks have thoughts, something to think about. And then we have another comment in the chat from Eileen saying that Robinson Rancheria and the Lake County School District has created a curriculum about the truth that happened to Pomo Nations within Lake County. It will be taught in grades K through 12 and may be started now or in the new year. We can contact Robinson for how they started and the steps they took with the school district. Thank you. I'd like to hear actually more about that if anybody does have insight on that, because that's where one of the bloodiest massacres in the state happened. And I would like to understand a bit how they're planning on addressing that, because that's kind of, as this council moves forward with truth telling, that'll be a piece that is a challenge, is how to create an awareness of the awfulness in a way that folks are not going to be immediately reactive to. And then we also have some contact info on the education legislation. Thank you.
Hi, Christina. This is Sally.
Hi, it's been too long. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm enjoying my break. But I wanted to let you know, I actually serve on the committee that's working with the Lake County Board of Education, and we are touching on a lot of sensitive areas. One of them actually is the situation that led up to the Bloody Island massacre, and how it's geared towards middle school, and how to approach the underlying events that had happened leading up to that. And so we've worked on it for a while, and it is very difficult to kind of frame that to a middle school environment. But I would be very happy to share you know, what we get once we get closer to an end product, on how we're going to do that. But you know, talking about Kelsey, and we have a town named after Kelsey, Kelseyville, which, you know, he was the one that was responsible for that whole massacre that happened. So it's been very interesting, and it's very difficult to try and frame that to the minds of a middle schooler and how they could absorb that, you know, that kind of history. So I just wanted to let you know I'm on that committee, and we've been working on it, and it's probably going to be a while before we actually end up with an end product, but I'll be happy to share with you what we end up with.
Thank you. That would be great. Also, just planting, in case it's something you want to think about, or any of the other folks in Lake County. I think a big piece of this is that, you know, at the state level, we're trying to do some of this stuff, but really a lot of the work does need to be happening in local communities. And so we've talked to some of the folks in LA County who are thinking about doing this kind of work. We've talked to other in other spaces, but I think Lake County is a very interesting and unique model of where tribes have really had a lot of ability to make a lot of changes in a way that I think if people like don't know about it, I encourage you to go take a look. And it occurs to me that this council may be interested in having like mini case studies of places that have kind of enacted ongoing restorative action. So when I think about it, I think about the fact that 2 county board supervisors are from tribes in the area. Or I think about the, you know, the curriculum that you're doing, or I think about the fact that there's a roundabout that looks like a pomo basket. And what are how did that happen and how did it get there and how can that be done in other places? So just something to think about. Other comments, suggestions, feedback? You're welcome to jump in. All feedback is good feedback. Or if you have suggestions about how you would prefer to have feedback, we're also open to that too. Loretta, did you have something you wanted to mention?
I was just going to briefly mention again the wellness practitioners. And I think a lot of the feedback we're receiving is to kind of create like a buffet of practitioners and have multiple options. But if you all have any recommendations of programs or individuals that we can look into, that would be very helpful too. Because these discussions it's heavy. And we do know that, you know, there's going to be a need to process and, you know, have these discussions in a productive way and not cause any more harm. But so if you have any suggestions, please feel free to jump on in, and any and all comments are great. And I see Josh has unmuted himself.
Sorry, dealing with some staff issues that but I'm been tracking this. I was hoping that Vice Chair Myers was still on, but it looks like he may have jumped off. Have you guys, do you guys know who Chag Lowry is? So I think he might be a good person to bring into this conversation because he did a kind of a whole impact of gold mining piece that was kind of and he kind of traveled it around and the impacts on indigenous cultures, especially in Northern California, but also just, you know, central, it's all of California, right? The impacts from that kind of industrial complex, as well as, you know, even in the early days when it was just, you know, a madhouse and free for all. And I think he might have some good ideas about how to present these really heavy topics in a way that's, number one, educational, but also number two, constructive, so that we can educate, but then also, you know, maybe even move people to action or to self-reflection.
And to add more flavor for the council, Chag does those beautiful graphic novels that tell stories about, you know, UROC veterans, UROC practices, and kind of very seamlessly and respectfully present the holistic lives of UROC peoples in the modern or modern-ish era. So this is not an endorsement, but they're very lovely. And I do not endorse, but if you see them and wanted them, I wouldn't tell you not to do
that. Christina, this is Sally again. I just had a thought too, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping all over the place because I didn't see the agenda, But
there is no
in
agenda,
the
and we
whole-
want you to jump all over the place. So sorry for interrupting, but please
Okay.
jump all over the place.
Okay, good, because I'm good at that. But one of the thoughts I had, you know, in this whole, you know, concept of healing and the atrocities and just the continuous, you know, insult to us, and that's the mascots. You know, has there been discussion about that? Because we in Lake County, we were successful in getting one of the local high schools to change their mascot name. And, you know, and that is not only in California, but nationwide, that's an issue. I don't know if there's been discussion about that, but I think it's something that the council should consider.
Thank you. And that has not specifically been discussed. And so it's something that the council can think about for sure. One thing on that, just to provide some context for the group if they want to engage in more discussions about it or just think about it, is that there was a bill that banned the R word for mascots in California, and I believe that was 2015. But we're doing research on the spot right now. Yeah, 2015 banned that specific word. But again, that's not the universe of things that are offensive. And I think at the time, the common knowledge of what happened here was definitely not there. So I think that this kind of discussion is something that the council could think about more about, given the truth that will come to light through this process. How will that knowledge be incorporated into creating a California that's more reflective of everybody here and more respectful of everybody's value?
Just on that note, is there maybe I haven't really been keeping up on it. I probably should have, but have we moved forward in California in terms of the ability for high school seniors to wear regalia during graduations?
That is a great question and very timely. There is a regalia bill that was signed in 2018. And there is a current bill from Assemblymember Ramos. Now this is turning into the Ramos show. But that's what happens when you're the only California Native American in the legislature. You get all of the projects. And he has a bill right now. Let me pull it up. Loretta and I were just talking about it this morning. Don't tell him.
Michael put in the chat the bill.
Oh, good.
EB 945. Thank you, Michael. And Michael is our awesome assistant who saves us all the time.
So wonderful and responsive. So if you get an email from him, that's who he is, and he's the best. And so it's that bill that's in the chat, I believe, creates a task force to kind of address the issue, given that it seems to be continuing. So that's kind of where that's at, if folks want to track that and reach out to Ramos's office on the newer issue. I know at the time when the eagle feather bill was, or I should just say regalia, but everybody knows that colloquially is eagle feather. With that bill, when Governor Brown signed it, there was kind of a concern about the fact that, like, there's already protections, but there's not really enforcement. And so for enforcement to happen, it typically is already too late. And so that's probably something that this task force is envisioning talking about, is how to change the actual culture so that people aren't having to sue after their graduation already happened. And then I got something in the chat about the State Renaming Commission. So that has actually gotten a complete overhaul. And I'm going to, it's the CACGN. And I don't know if our partners from resources want to jump in, but basically last fall, well, actually, let me actually give some more context. So last summer, with a lot of the, you know, I don't even want to call it unrest because that doesn't sound right. I think with the mounting disappointment in a system that does not reflect the majority values, and a lot of the movement that came as a result and the awareness of the issues that came as a result, the governor and the resources agency started looking internally at mechanisms where they could be doing better on the state side to be more reflective of the values and the diversity of California. One of the things that they looked at was the California Advisory Committee on Geographic Names. And that is a committee that's been around for, oh, and we've got a link now in the chat from Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. That committee has been sitting around for a couple decades. It has been moving, but has been more of a passive committee that has taken a look at things as proposed from, you know, with the community, from stakeholders, and has basically been in an advisory capacity for the U.S. Bureau of Geographic Names, which is responsible for renaming. They don't rename buildings, but they rename landscapes, mountains, things like that. So, for example, last summer, they renamed Jeff Davis Peak to Dak Dogoet Mountain, which is a Washoe name that predates anything in English, and also started thinking about how they can be more proactive in addressing other names. And so the committee itself was reconfigured based on existing assets of the resource agency. So the Native American Heritage Commission now has a seat. The California African American Museum now has a seat. The California State Library, a couple other places, Parks and Rec, places where they actually have some naming authorities as well. And then added some ex officio members who are non-voting but are there to help inform the decision. So Assemblymember James Ramos from the Select Committee on Native Affairs and now the Native American Caucus. The folks from the Department of Transportation so that they could kind of think about how to rename roads in conjunction. Folks from the Legislative Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, API Caucus, LGBTQ Caucus, and Women's Caucus. And then there's some federal advisors there as well. So that's kind of the update on that. This group is also welcome to feed in, and we can also sit on, have a designee from this council on as an ex officio member, I'm sure. We'd have to run it by them, but I think that would probably be okay with them. But that's kind of where that's at. So that's another effort that has gotten some momentum in the past few months, really had its first kind of reorganized meeting last month, I think, unless it was this month. It's pandemic time is not real, but then is having another meeting on May 7th if folks want to join. And so that's one thing too, as I continue to just have the Christina show right now. One thing that the council can do too is look at existing things that maybe could work but aren't working yet. So, or are working but aren't working to their full potential. So one thing we chatted about yesterday was the existence of multiple tribal colleges in California and how could those be utilized and supported better. So the council can kind of look at a lot of things, doesn't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. So where there are things that could just benefit from increased attention, can also look at that too.
Christina, this is Isaac. Since you mentioned that, then can we look at with parks in providing better access to to tribes to be able to gather their basket material, medicine. I know from myself, I've had mixed results as a non-federally recognized tribe. There are some areas where they welcome you in, and there's others that make you jump through basically roundabout hoops so that it doesn't get to happen. And if you do hear something, then the season and the time to actually go gather is closed. And so if we can definitely take a look at that with parks and trying to revamp that, I think that would be helpful for tribes. I've heard that in the Native community. Obviously, we talked a little bit about some of the social gatherings with fiestas and big times, but even at ceremonies, you know, between the Native community, there's a lot of being able to, you know, yeah, I was able to jump this hurdle and I was able to gather here or reach out to this particular person that can help you. So there is obviously talks within our own community on how we can do these things and those in official positions that are willing to work with us, but we still continually hit roadblocks when it comes to being able to gather what we need. And even the word gather versus collect. A lot of the agencies that you go to, they'll say, oh, well, you want to collect this or you want to do this, and no, we're there to gather. And we can explain and educate on how that practice of gathering promotes new growth. So I think it kind of works hand in hand, and I guess I've been talking for a while, so I'll be quiet.
You're allowed to talk as much as you want. This is a talk-free space. One thing on that you mentioned, the gathering versus collecting, I do want to also put a pin in, because a lot of these things that the state is trying to do, they're navigating a bunch of laws that weren't written to account for Native perspectives, or were written ignoring Native perspectives. So that is also something this council could think about, is how, you know, whether there is value in kind of any legislative efforts to better reflect Native practices. So for example, a lot of what DFW does as a preview check is kind of like work through the existing laws to be able to you know, create something that looks like what traditional gathering would be, even if it's not quite that. So this council could think about, you know, whether it might be worth having a bigger effort to better reflect that in state law, rather than having to kind of go through all of those hoops and then have it like be kind of what it should be, but not really. So there's also in the chat at the bottom of the names website, you'll find out how to propose or change a geographic name. That is like probably the highlight of what I should have been saying, is that the process itself is still community driven. But so if there are places that should be changed, please go to that website and take a look. And then if you need help on how to do it, we can figure out how to help you. So it is still community driven, but also under the new charter, there is an affirmative obligation to consult with tribes on name changes. So that's also another little tweak there. We also in the chat that there's now a tribal working group under the California GIS Council, and the contact is Donna Begay at the State Water Board. So her contact is also in the chat.
And Christina, since you mentioned it, right, with, you know, reaching out and consulting with tribes, I'm looking, I guess, for the right words, how to context this, but sitting in on a NAGPRA consultation that UC Berkeley hosted and realizing the contact list in which they had, which was outdated. How can we better ensure that the agencies that are doing tribal consultation are getting the most up-to-date information for tribes on the contact list? And just seeing how we can do that, how we can better do that, whether it's being proactive and mailing it to them, emailing it to them. And I don't know if anybody else has suggestions here on how that would work, but I definitely think when there's going to be outreach to tribes, ensuring that you capture the source in which you're trying to go to, and you're not reaching out to a tribe that fell off the contact list, or their chair is no longer there, so they don't get it. Email address has changed, or mailing address has changed. There's just so many things. And obviously you hit it earlier with the pandemic. There's so much uncertainty that is kind of happened, and there's still adjusting that's taking place. And yes, we're starting to get back to some normalcy, and I'm one to welcome in-person meetings again and be able to gather. But looking at that, making sure that we actually are doing true meaningful consultation with tribes and actually contacting those that need to be contacted.
Yeah, so I think on our end in working with agencies, we just need to continue also to inform them that the contact list changes pretty frequently. And I mean, like a couple times a year is frequent. And so if they have a contact list that's even a year old, it's probably not going to work. Also that tribal elections happen pretty frequently for all tribes. So that, you know, even the list that we have at the Heritage Commission is not always up to date, given that there's constant turnover. Or I'm mischaracterizing it. It's normal turnover, but when there's over, you know, a certain number of tribes, it feels like a lot of turnover. Yeah, so I think that part of this is like on the part of the UC Berkeley's of the world, it's also, we can continue to emphasize that they need to continually be in touch to get those updated lists, but also from the tribal community urging as well, that at least at the Heritage Commission for those purposes, that list is as up to date as it can be given tribal engagement, and that if it's not up to date on, you know, an agency side, it's the agency just hasn't checked recently. I guess too, and it might also be worth exploring the idea with folks that there's a nuance in how tribal engagement works, and that the NHC list also doesn't maybe capture all of the tribes that could potentially be interested, just given that nuance. And that there's also Native people that might be interested in their ancestors. So that may not be a member of any tribe. So just putting that out there too.
Switching gears a little bit, I received a message about maybe an idea of looking into changing Title V of the Education Code, so public institutions can recognize the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day versus Columbus Day. So that's just a comment I received and wanted to read it out for everybody and see if anyone else has some thoughts on that. Or anything else. If you have any thoughts on anything else or just want to jump in, introduce yourself, this is the time to do it.
Neil, would you like to?
Sure.
Sorry, Josh, we got a raised hand.
Trying to be Zoom polite. Hi, this is my first meeting. My name is Neil Thopper, and I work for a project called Minnow, and we're a people of color-led project that works to support farmers of color in California and also advance Indigenous sovereignty. So I was sort of wanting to come here just to listen and get a lay of the land, and appreciate what I'm hearing already. I just wanted to maybe chime in on what the chair of the council member was saying about gathering and access to lands for traditional use. I was just on a call with the Department of Conservation this morning, and they are interested in advancing racial equity. And one of the programs that they administer is called this Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program. And I don't think they really know where to start, but what they do is fund easement acquisitions. But out of some number of $1 million that they've spent already, it's just basically, protecting private individual property ownership. And I don't think any of their easements, maybe one, included consultation with a native tribe. And so just thinking about what you were sharing is maybe ways for them to work within their system already to just also add layers of maybe cultural respect easements as part of the process in order to qualify to get funding to protect agricultural land, is to say, you need to consult with native communities in your area and tribes in your area, and two, also in addition to the conservation easement, tack on a use easement as one step towards that kind of access.
Thank you. Great comments and welcome. We hope you continue to engage with the council.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Josh, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, it was more of a question. Now I lost my question. I think, I remember what it was. In my conversations with Buster and catching up on a few things, he had mentioned something in regards to just kind of wanting an update on the, and I'm going to probably mess up the name. Is it the California Indian Heritage Center? Or is that, did I get it right? Oh, wow. And is this the forum where we could get an update on that, or is that a different forum?
Well, you're in luck because I lead that one too. So I can update you wherever you can find me. So on that one, we have a task force of tribal leaders that has been working to vet some requests for qualifications. So basically, I'll back up a bit and I'll try not to take up the whole remainder of the time. But back in 2018, we did a round of consultations on both the model curriculum that was passed by Limon but hasn't been funded yet and could be something that could be funded as aligned with this council. But also did some concurrent consultations on the California Indian Heritage Center, which had gotten $100 million in the budget for that year. Based on those consultations, we stood up a task force, and the governor in December issued kind of a directive, an executive order to create a task force to guide the creation of this council, just so that it wouldn't be kind of a totally parks driven type of thing without any sort of community input or engagement. But so there is a task force that is advising on the Heritage Commission. And it has a pretty good mix of folks. I can tell you the names right now, and if I miss any, I can talk to you later about who they are, but it is a little bit open-ended if there's any interest from the community to want to engage with it. But we've got Chairman Roberts from Yochadihi, Vice Chairperson Laurel Ross from Grayton, Chairperson Macaro from Pechanga, Chairman Denver from Bishop. We've got Shirley Louse from Trinidad, Chairwoman Pinto from Hamul. We've got Nakia Zavala from Santa Ynez, Rick West, who was at the Autry and I think is still finishing up his time there. We've got Karina Gould from Lishan, and then we've got also an honorary seat for the Indian Heritage Center Foundation, which is kind of the legacy from the previous effort. So that team has had some initial consultations, but really is in the process of they have a subcommittee that is going to, in collaboration with the parks team, that can help kind of do the technical aspects, review all of the SOQs, statements of qualifications, and then kind of narrow it down to a pool where the whole task force will decide on that group. That should happen in the next couple of months. And then once that contractor is in place, there will be probably significant tribal engagement and listening sessions kind of like this. But that's kind of where that's all at. So it's moving, but it's also in the process of getting under contract. And that's kind of a 10-year project. So there's not a lot of opportunities to say like, here's a bunch of shiny stuff. It's a lot of paper right now, but it is moving and they are looking forward to engaging the community.
Thank you.
Additional comments, questions, thoughts? One thing I wanted to put out there is we've got a lot of discussion about model curriculums, curricula, and even just mandatory curricula. And I'm wondering if there's been any efforts in the community to engage with some of the private school groups, because it seems like they may have different kinds of things that and flexibilities that they can do as well, and hits kind of a different segment of the population. I'll leave that hanging while people think about it. But we've got a question on, is the council going to work on MMIW issues? I think that that is something that the council can consider thinking about. And so if the council would like to work on that, and that is something the community would like to engage or would like the council to engage on, I think that is completely on the table. I think in the context of the council's work historically, it can for sure be grounded in the historical mistreatment and degradation of Native women, and is something that could also be grounded in the non-consensual nature of a lot of our ancestors' relationships. So it is something the council could for sure examine and link to these past awful depredations influencing how Native women are viewed in society today, especially given that a lot of us are matrilineal. I do welcome further thoughts on that though, but if the council wants to think about it a bit more, I think that would be appropriate. And also given, sorry, you're getting real life thought stream right now, but given the issues with state jurisdiction, that it's again another gap that the council could look at.
This is Kathy Corey here, and my thoughts on that are, I find that this situation needs a lot of assistance here in California. I think looking at the study that was done in Northern California, that California actually is one of the higher states with missing murdered Indigenous women. You know, what comes to mind to me is the Khadijah Britton incident, because this is ongoing 3 years where, you know, this is still an open case. In the Bay Area, Nicole Smith as well, and Jessica Alba. I think that this is definitely something that needs more attention in California. I don't know how the federal jurisdiction of these things is interfacing, but, you know, it seems that there has been traditionally a lag between the occurrence and then follow up on investigation with that at an adequate level. So yeah, I definitely think that that is a great issue for this Truth and Healing Council to possibly address. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got about 6 minutes. Loretta's unmuted, so feel free to jump in, Loretta.
I was just going to ask if anyone had any last-minute ideas for subcommittees. That would be helpful at this point to present to the council.
And again, on these in the near term, are there things that could be stood up now while the council's getting its foundation kind of created, that would be just good to kind of, you know, is there an outreach subcommittee? Is there, you know, there's all sorts of things that could be part of the business of the council, with the idea that once the council hears more from this community about scope, issues to be examined, starts actually hearing stories, we'll also create subcommittees that would track with that as well. So folks are silent, and I will assume that it's because you all had a big lunch. But one thing to also think about is, you know, we're still kind of in a weird place with COVID. But one thing that has been discussed in past meetings is the idea of locations for in-person meetings. And so we had some discussion today about aligning with you know, certain cultural immersion type of things. But there's also been discussions about, as I said, having meetings be focused in places that treaties were made, having meetings be focused in places that are significant to the local tribal population, so that both the tribes that are there can be in a place that feels supportive, but also it can also remind folks that are not part of the Native community that all of this is Native land. So just something to put out there. And if there are suggestions about how that could work, would love to hear them at some point, or in the next 3 minutes, or tomorrow. Or
I was going to suggest if you sleep on it tonight, you want to join tomorrow, you're more than welcome to join as many listening sessions as you would like.
Is it the same link, Christina, for tomorrow?
Yes, it is the same link. We've also got a dial-in option, and it's the same link every month too. So if you want to take a look at the future meeting dates for the next year, they're all up on that website with the link. And we'd love to talk to you every month.
Hi, I have a question. I couldn't help but hear that you were saying that we can attend all the meetings this week. I'm actually located in Central California. I was planning on attending your meeting tomorrow, specifically here in Fresno County. I was just kind of curious, are there representatives to your committee from Central California? And if so, how might we figure out who they are?
The answer is yes, and I am pulling up the tribal fair, and this is actually a good point. I'm going to put a link here too, so that's why I'm taking a little while to answer. The regional oh, Michael, you are magic. So if you go to About, you can see who are the representatives from your area. So in Central Region, Central is going to be a bit of a mix because it's tracking with kind of the federal districts at the recommendation of tribes. But we do have Vice Chairman now, Neil Perron, from who is Yokut, and then but he's classified as Eastern Region, but that would probably be the closest one for you. But if you want to take a look at those members, all of them are open to engagement, as long as you don't engage them all at once, because then we have some open meeting issues. But the folks on here, the folks you see tomorrow, you are welcome to reach out to them as you are comfortable.
Okay, I'm on the website actually, and you said go to About. I go to the About Us, and I'm struggling to kind of find the list that you're talking about, or find anybody's names.
It should be right in the chat where it says About, and if you scroll down, it says voting members. I'll paste it one more time, because the About Us is about the Tribal Advisor's Office, and then the About for the Truth and Healing Council is about this council.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I see the Southern, the Northern, Eastern, and okay, the Central is the Chumash, or Chumash and Luceño.
Yep.
That's not Southern?
No, Central it tracks with, so we've got Central, Eastern, Southern, and Northern, and we've got it tracked with the federal districts, which is a little bit different from how the BIA separates tribes.
Oh, okay, because I'm indigenous to here in Central Valley, and those tribes are so far away to us. So it was kind of confusing. That's why I wanted the clarification, because I don't see any of the tribes that are locally to the Fresno area. You know, you said Yokut, and that's, you know, it's a broad tribe. There's so many tribes within that Yokut family, so to speak. But you know, Chumash and Luceños are so far away from us. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, so with Vice Chairman Perron, he's from Tule River, and in appointing to the council, the idea was that the council isn't necessarily like, we want you to be engaged personally. The council isn't kind of playing telephone with your engagement. You can talk directly to the council, you can talk, and they just make kind of the overall direction, but that you should be directly engaging with the council itself. So if you'd like to engage, you can go through Vice Chairman Perron, or you can talk directly to the council in these kind of formats, or within the council meetings as well.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
I just wanted to highlight too, I put in the chat the draft bylaws, and the reason for doing that is, one, if you want to take a look at them, and then two, there's definitions that define the different counties that are in the regions, because I myself get confused because normally my tribe's traditionally like a Southern California tribe, but we're central in this. So definitely take a look at that, and it'll help you kind of conceptualize like which county is tied to which region.
Thank you.
Okie doke. Well, with that, we're a little over time. So for those of you who will join us tomorrow, we'll see you tomorrow. Otherwise, maybe we'll see you Friday in the regular meeting. Council members, do you have any closing comments?
I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who attended, and we look forward to working with you in the future, and I enjoyed hearing your ideas.
And I'll echo that. Shururu, thank you everybody for coming, sharing your thoughts, opening your hearts and your ears and your spirits to be able to share with us. Really do appreciate it and look forward to seeing everybody hopefully again on Friday or in the meetings yet to come that are monthly. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your time and your comments. Take care.